Okay, we are live here for the IPS Evening Deprogram for January 25th, 2024. And we actually have something of a topic tonight. Does the depopulation crisis balance out the border crisis? Seems like one problem might solve another. Anyway, we'll talk mostly about the border crisis, Civil War, World War III, World War 33, World War Infinite. It's just they go one from the other. They hit you with Civil War. If you don't care, they do World War III. That doesn't work, they go back. And a lot of people are talking about the border and Texas and the federal government and the standoff, and Donald Trump calling for governors to send their troops over there to defend the border. This is all a repeat of build the wall, which, if you remember, it never happened. And recently I've been noticing the kind of curious parallel between right wing attitudes toward illegal aliens and right wing attitudes toward extraterrestrials. And it's literally the same thing. The left wants the aliens to come. The right will see them as a government psyop to take their rights or as demons. And then you look at the situation with illegal immigrants, it's the same thing. And recently, Tucker Carlson has been describing the alien agenda as actually these things are dark. And they're from far away, obviously, because they're aliens. I'm like, okay, dark foreigners, I get it. There's a subtext. But if you think about it even further, from the very introduction of the alien invasion theme, it always results in one world. Nations being, I guess, put into a common nation for the good of all mankind because of war, etc. And the aliens have to fix everything. Well, aliens are grays, meaning black and white, like the perfect mix, no race, no gender, the future version of ourselves perfected where we've transcended all these divisions, etc. So I kind of look at now the alien invasion is more of a myth and a psyop, but it's to adjust our attitudes towards embracing the ubiquitous illegal alien invasion and the dissolution of national sovereignty for the benefit of all mankind. All right, let's see. We are joined here by McDirtywork, the HBIC. Let's go. Thrustazar. 1,400. Oh, 144K, I see. That's a. Speaking of alien invasion, it's a Rapture reference. He says, live and let live. Joined by Diana South, Salty Siren, Nick the NASA Pimp, says full moon penguins. Yeah, the moon is in Leo, and it is full tonight, so expect the usual. And I have noticed an uptick in activity on the full moons. In fact, last year there was a full moon where I saw a houseless person with a knife walking across an intersection to take a backpack from another houseless person. But I see that stuff on the full moons. In fact, earlier tonight, someone, I mean, this is like the fourth time in 3 months, someone went through my truck and stole some stuff. The last time they only got a banana, and I think they also took my gym gloves and some gummies. I mean, it's just like I put a club. I'm in the club, so nobody can take my truck because I have a club on the wheel. But they still help themselves. They go in there. It's like worse than raccoons. Like, should I leave stuff out for them? And I was thinking maybe I should get a bumper sticker that says police department bait car because they'd probably fall for it. All right, joined by Cheesy Cool. Salty Siren says Wolf Moon. Oh, is it? Oh, yeah, that's right. That's right. We were talking about the Wolf Moon a couple years ago when Elon Musk was talking about Dogecoin or Doggy Coin to the moon, Dog Moon, Wolf Moon. And weirdly enough, he posted a picture of his two Starship rockets before one of them had blown up. So you have these two rockets, and in between, he had a picture of the Wolf Moon as he was talking about Dogecoin going to the moon. But interestingly, if you look at the whole picture of it, the tarot card of the moon has two pillars with a wolf and a dog, which has some kind of meaning having to do with, the domesticated in the wild, lycanthropy, and the cyclic changes that the moon brings, which has always been associated with, lunacy. But there was a lot of lunar stuff. They were like Dogecoin to the moon. How did that work out? Well, we had Moonfall. Concurrent with that, the movie about the moon falling. And then we did have a pretty significant crypto crash later. All right, so let's go ahead and get through my notes. I have a lot of stuff on Twitter to go through as well. It's been a very interesting couple of hours just going through things. And the invasion psyop, I call it the illegal alien invasion psyop, is not only predictable, they bring this up every election cycle, but this actually goes back to Donald Trump and Trackdown 1958. There was a TV show in 1958, a Western, and in it, a man named Trump, like a snake oil salesman, goes through a town and he sells them all on a shield to protect them from a quote cosmic threat. So this is some vintage Donald Trump predictive programming. But if you think about it, he's like build the wall, protect you from the aliens, and then he's Space Force, I'll protect you from the illegal aliens. But it's notable that now the border and the wall is getting the spotlight, and along comes Trump to specifically call for some kind of action from all the various governors. And we'll get to that as well as there's a new JFK Jr. in town. Apparently, Edward X. Young, who's an actor and a special effects makeup artist, is another candidate if you're still looking for a JFK Jr. A lot of interesting stuff happening in Qville. Donald Trump retruthed this picture of himself praying, and it's obviously an AI generated thing because I don't think he is actually here in this picture. It looks real except for he's got 6 fingers. Well, someone looked into it and they said if you go to 2 Samuel 21:20 King James Version, it says there was a battle where there was a man of great stature that had on every hand 6 fingers, every foot 6 toes, and he was also born to the giant. So if you look at this, Donald Trump, 6 fingers, and then you look at his Nephilim son Baron, there might be something to it. And I seem to recall Kim Kardashian having 6 toes at some point. They forgot to edit one of them out. And she's in the news right now because I think she's still a rep for that Balenciaga who had the CP adjacent weird bondage teddy bear photos with kids. And I remember one other point here, because sometimes I go onto my Instagram and I see Ye posting pictures of his wife who's basically a gimp. She's wearing a black gimp hood and like a string thong, and he just walks her around the house taking pictures of her, which, I mean, that's their thing. I'm not knocking bondage or whatever, but it totally goes contrary to the outrage he had about how Hollywood has corrupted his family, and he was tired of his the exploitation of his wife by this industry, etc. And I'm like, wow, that's like a 180. There's no consistency from him anyway. A lot of inherent contradictions, and it might be part of his script. If you go back to the song Black Skinhead, which is like 10 years old now, you actually see him, or in this storyline, describing that it's a character who's going through a gradual mental breakdown. So it may all be scripted. Speaking of scripted, I have an interesting clip here taken from a plane on September the 11th. And this is not a plane from within one of the planes that was attacked. Sorry, this is not footage from an attacked plane. This is another plane. But the pilot is giving a breakdown to the passengers, which is, I'm like, wow, they're on a plane right now. And he's saying, oh, by the way, there have been a bunch of hijackings. But in this telling, he describes how the Pentagon was attacked by a helicopter and how the White House was now smoking. Like, the story was way more dramatic when this guy tells it. Let me go ahead and play this clip.
At least 3 aircraft have been hijacked in the United States. 2 of which were hijacked in the New York area, and they were driven into the World Trade Center towers. They destroyed both towers. Both towers have completely collapsed. Of course, we have, let's see. In addition to that, another aircraft was hijacked. I believe this is the U.S. Air hijacked airplane, and that was blown up and destroyed out over the ocean.
Okay, so another one destroyed over the ocean. Anyway, it goes on. Helicopter attacks the Pentagon, and the White House is on fire.
Was attacked with a helicopter loaded with explosives.
A helicopter loaded with explosives. And I think that might have been one of the scenes in the Turner Diaries. I'll have to look back at that.
And the there's no damage estimates right now. Also, we've had other reports of the White House being attacked, and currently they're reporting that.
Who the hell are our guys then? Isn't anybody paying attention?
They're reporting now that there's smoke coming out of the White House, but no further.
Smoke coming out of the White House. Now, thinking back on this, none of them, yeah, they didn't mention Building 7. They didn't have that on their script. Uh, it's funny though. Looking back, I mean, it's funny, not funny, because they're terrorized, but they're designed this way. Their minds have been molded to be gullible. They're auto believers, and they're downloading the terror. And it's not hard to imagine what he just described because every movie, every TV show predicted this leading up to it. Not just like the lone gunman right up, but like, collateral damage. There's so many. We can list hundreds of different movies, comics, video games, commercials, all kinds of ads, etc., that all pointed to this event because it was a buildup. They were working on it for decades. 9/11 was not an anomaly. It wasn't an attack, it was a movie. And this movie was played directly onto the collective psyche. And they, or the masses even today, are programmed not to parse information that is based upon the implicit authority of the screen. And as such, they don't have any sort of mental immune system. I often liken it to mind aids. So they are just infected with this terror virus. And this new worldview is now going to be downloaded into their heads, new threats, everything's going to be reset. They hit a reset button on that day, and you're watching the people right now going through the reset. There's not a critical thinker in there. There's nobody saying this is all fake. No one would have had that kind of information. But we do now. And looking back at it, I'm thinking this would never work on me again. I'm not really triggerable. But this is also almost sadistic. Fascinating. Anyway, we're going to be going over more of that later. I think one of the best examples of concurrent programming I can find with 9/11 is the whole thing that happened with the billboard for collateral damage that was in view of like two different handheld cameras when it happened. And it was one of those movies where they had to change it because it was too close. It was too close to 9/11. Well, that's what we've been talking about, predictive programming, concurrent programming. Here's an interesting survey. Young women are becoming more liberal. And if you look at this chart here, and this is posted by Lauren Witzke, who's a troll. And I think she's Stu Peters' boss. Big time troll. She's kind of like the same far right bomb throwing, kind of lowbrow, Nick Fuentes level garbage. She's kind of like a slightly better looking but dumber and colder. But here she says, share of American women and men 18 to 29 identifying as liberal. So the men identifying as liberal from 1998 to 2022, 25%. From 1998 to 2022, young women have gone from 28% to looks like 42, 45%. It's a significant trend, and she's asking, what is the main cause of this? My answer is Barbieheimer. And I talked about this the other day. Because Barbieheimer is something they put together. And the significance of it is the splitting of the atom and the canification of the American male, the splitting of the nuclear family, and the introduction of Barbie feminism. And if you watch the beginning of the Barbie movie, Barbie appears in a Kubrick-esque scene as the monolith. But instead of apes, you have little girls who are being told that they can uh, dispense with the idea of being mothers and be like Barbie. And so what do? They take their babies by the ankles and they dash their heads on the rocks. So you have infanticide, Barbie looking down approvingly, tips her glasses down, shows one eye, 666 with the hands. Basically we saw infanticide, sacrifice. Pretty dark stuff. And nobody in any reviews I've read have picked up on the real subtext of the movie. But Barbieheimer, the timing of the two, very significant. And I found the Godzilla movie to be very interesting in this context, insofar as uh, Godzilla is a metaphor for the nuke. The Godzilla movie outdid Oppenheimer, and the story of the Godzilla movie is the attempt of the protagonist to reassemble a shattered family out of an orphan and two others, and it was about bringing back the nuclear family after the nuke, reassembling it, and thinking about the future. So there's a subtext that actually pertains to both these films that are supposedly, separate, but nothing is separate. It is monolithic. Joined by Multi Zero Dagger. Thanks for joining. Joe Fiore says women are more likely to be hooked on big pharma pills. Hmm. Well, I think media is like the main drug that you got to get disconnected from. And when I say drug, I mean hopium, doom scrolling, dopium. It's bad. Uh, Menthol laced red pills, lots of them. In fact, let's go ahead and just jump into this. This is interesting. I often talk about the controlled opposition right wing, and their view on everything is it's real, but it's crazier than the news says. I'm like, it's fake until proven real. So these are the people who are living in a nightmare. And really think about what they're saying. Pretend for a minute that she believes it. This is Lauren Witzke again. I'm not specifically targeting her or Nick Fuentes or any of them, but they're just representative of this group of people who are getting the same memos every day, and they all have the same talking points. But listen to this take on 9/11.
I believe that 9/11 was a human sacrifice on a mass scale. I think that, they have been doing this work with these demons, but the devil demands a sacrifice. Look at any person in Hollywood or famous person. They had to sacrifice something, whether it was their innocence or
So this is part of the satanic panic thing that they've been working on. And you'll note that the left is scared of the pandemic. And who carries the pandemic? The right wingers, because they're anti vaxxers. So they want to lock down, segregate from them, censor them. But the right, they don't believe in that virus science stuff. No, but they believe in sin and the devil. And who spreads sin and the devil? The left wing. So they want to separate from the left wing. In other words, moral pandemic or moral panic demic, and then the pandemic models are both part of a bifurcated psyop. So it's safe to say both are fake. You don't have to worry about sin. You don't have to worry about viruses. These are just tools that the elite or the mind control program uses to divide people into categories of saved and unsaved. And they don't want 100% saved. They want it 50-50 so they can get you to fight. Joined by Into the Beyond, Cubstar, Isabel Ann, Ollie Goering says Yahweh demanded crispy sacrifices too. Right. Yeah, and it's also an oversimplification to say it's God versus Satan because the elite in their religion is more pantheistic, polytheistic, pagan, animistic, panpsychism. It is more ancient astrotheological than just good, evil, God, Satan. It's way more complicated than that. I'll be handing out wrenches here shortly, by the way. So this is the IPS evening deprogram. And one of my questions, though, because a lot of people are freaking out about immigration and people coming over the border. But the same people who are anti-open borders or who are scared of aliens and immigrants, they're also terrified that there's a depopulation going on, and they're mad at me because I don't believe them. Like, you don't believe in the genocide? No, no, I don't. But I'm like, okay, isn't that a good thing? Because you're mad because you got millions of immigrants coming in. Well, aren't you pretty certain that they're all going to get killed anyway by the depop agenda? And speaking of the depopulation agenda, because I got a message on this earlier today, and I wanted to address it. And again, the left wing believes there's a population crisis, too many people. Uh, the right believes the same thing. There's a crisis, but for them, there's not enough people. We're running out. But anyway, I got a comment from Lynn who said, "You haven't spent enough time on a farm or a ranch. You don't understand culling of the herd." Now, I know the concept of culling of the herd. However, if the same elite who are culling the herd put up the Georgia Guidestones 44 years ago, which then was 500,000 or 500 million, and now we're up to 7 billion, I'm sorry, but I'm not the one that doesn't know the definition of culling the herd. It's the ones that you say are going to cull the herd who have not only not done it, but they've allowed the populations to metastasize. So I think it's safe to say that nobody's going to cull the herd. And Mizell says no herds are being culled. I don't think so either. And it's just at this point, it's pretty obvious to me that there is another example of axiom, auto hoaxer axiom number 47, the one about how if it's a bifurcated psyop, then it's probably fake. Well, this is another example. They both agree on the crisis, but they have a different opinion on what the crisis is. Okay, I mentioned Barbie slightly in the Whore of Babylon thing, and I don't know if this connects, but I sometimes think that the various celebrity pop stars they put up there are all representatives of the same cast of characters. They're all just embodying, devils, gods, goddesses, etc. And I don't know specifically about Taylor Swift's archetype. I haven't looked too deep into Taylor Swift's persona. However, yeah, she looks like the Church of Satan's founder's daughter, Zena LeVay, but that's not her. Uh, Taylor Swift is like 33 and took the spotlight. And that's a very common thing with these psyops, that number. We've observed it quite often. But today, something happened where some group of people created a bunch of Taylor Swift AI generated nude images. And here we go. X can't stop spread of explicit fake AI Taylor Swift images, sparking outrage. So she's got a stalker as well. Someone says she can't be the next John Lennon. So she's got a stalker, but somebody has spread images of her. It's gone viral. And I can't believe that this is just a coincidence. I'm trying to figure out what the agenda is. What's the agenda behind this? Maybe there's multiple agendas. But why are they spreading this image? One post was viewed 45 million times, and it took them 17 hours to remove it. It's got to have to do with this idea of disease X, mind viruses, and the need to control the commons. Like, for example, who's the leading purveyor of space junk? Elon Musk. If we don't stop Elon Musk, what's going to happen to low Earth orbit? We're going to have a Kessler effect where there's like an avalanche in the sky as all the objects hit each other. There's so much junk going to be locked down. He's also the leading purveyor of mind junk, and disease X is causing all kinds of shooters and radicals and extremists to pop off. And this is another example of it. I think they're doing these things, problem, reaction, solution. In other words, show the public there's a problem so everyone clamors for a solution. And the solution, of course, will be more control, more censorship, because this is why we can't have nice things. I think it's the same thing with the Mickey Mouse, with the gun hijacking the plane, crashing into the Twin Towers. Hilarious photo generated by Bing. And because of that, they gave Bing a lobotomy, made it more sensitive, because somebody took a Mickey Mouse image and created something. It's like that. The mentality here is this. It'd be like a teacher's going, like, hey, I'm taking away crayons because this person drew something obscene. It's like nobody can draw. It's this collective punishment, which I'm already sick of it. Something else. I've come across this. It's the same narratives from post 9/11, and I said this before. 3/11 truth is 9/11 truth all over again, but they've replaced Muslims with Chinese. And so the big story now is Muslims are being imported by the Chinese, and they're going to be sleeper cells that will rise up and kill everybody when everything goes, quote, kinetic. Not only that, but they're claiming that what's in store for us by the CCP are the desires of the Georgia Guidestones. And again, the Georgia Guidestones are a colossal failure if that was their vision, because why would you set a bar why would you set a number so low and allow them to go so high? It's out of control. But I've been listening to a lot of this, and here's two lieutenant colonels, a master sergeant, and a military author, and they're talking about this illegal alien apocalypse that's upon us. Let me go ahead and play a short clip.
And such.
Well, remember, he's worked with the Feds, so there's some credibility to it. The only flaw in that supposition is that a lot of post offices have been closed in the last 10 years since Crossfire Hurricane, but that doesn't mean that there's...
Now, what these guys are rambling about for the most part is doom and gloom, and they said that the Chinese have a bioweapon that will kill 80% of non-Asians.
I wanted to mention also that when we're talking about the UN and the blue helmets, we're not going to see blue helmets. If somebody is saying When I see blue helmets, that's when I'm going to go off. That guy's a tool or a moron.
So yeah, we're not going to see blue helmets. They're going to come under a lot of different disguises, but essentially, where these colonels are talking about their inside intel, it's all going to end very soon.
The United States State Department has one of the much smaller, like 1/10 as big buildings. It's now called the what is it called? The College of Knowledge. Anyway, that this what used to be Fort Clayton is now Invasion Headquarters.
City of
America
Knowledge.
in
The
yeah,
City of
America
Knowledge
in,
Foundation is what it's called now.
right, and the State Department's
Anyway, I find this boring, but the story is a lot of soldiers, enemy soldiers, are being imported, and they're all going to be activated at some point. Well, I heard the same thing 8 years ago. Build the wall, build the wall. We heard the same thing post 9/11. Muslims are coming over wearing sombreros, and they're going to blow themselves up in Jewish delis or whatever. It never happened. None of it's ever happened. And my point being, the alien invasion, illegal alien invasion, these are psyops that are all meant to agitate the right wing, and it's an election season. So I'm like, look, I'm not into the, I don't fall for any of this stuff. None of this stuff to me is all that scary or intimidating. Okay, here we go. Thank you for the link here. This was Jennifer Reeves. A 33-year-old Seattle man was arrested Monday after loitering outside Taylor Swift's home for the second time in 3 days. A Tribeca home. So 33-year-old Tribeca, 3 days. This is all code, obviously. What does it mean? Not sure yet. Ms. L says recycled stories, loops. Oh yeah, they recycle everything. They recycle scripts. Eventually they want to recycle people. That's, Soylent Green, the ultimate expression of their green cult. Fascinating. Seattle man stalking charge. Okay, so he's going to be happy with the AI images, I'm sure. If you missed it, I recently had a conversation with John the Bon, and one of the topics was is the end near? And do we need to have a secular neo-eschatology and join in with the religious crowd and all agree that the world's going to end? And one of the points I'd like to make here is that they're controlling time and space, and they constrain your concept of the world to limit you on space, and they also want to limit your concept of time. It's all part of putting you in a controllable bubble. And I think any end times notion, especially religious, but also a lot of these new ones like climate change or QAnon, all this stuff, they never come true. But they have a purpose, and I think the purpose is, again, to keep you stuck in the now, terrestrial survival, not thinking long term, like the news vendors who write our news way in advance. LMD says there's a way to raise your voice. Yeah. No. I have to buy a new mic. In fact, let me just go ahead and point. If you want to support Infinite Played Media, I am going to work on picking up a new mic, a desk mic. I heard I'll get better results. So there's a link there. We're doing a number of things, upgrading the office, the studio. I have a camera now, and hopefully we'll see some of the changes coming up very soon. I'm also working on the live streaming configuration. Demetra 101 says economy's up 3.3%. Into the Beyond says lock up 33-year-olds for safety's sake. Hey, I said in January 2021, before January 6th, I said quarantine the 33-year-olds. That was the point of a live stream, because we found all kinds of them going nuts. And then January 6th comes, and a 33-year-old dressed up like a shaman, carrying a spear, runs into the Capitol, leads an insurrection. And we've come across many examples. I mean, even more recently, there's a 33-year-old who thought he was Captain America, who tried to break into a military base, which is interesting, considering Captain America, Civil War, all this Civil War talk. There's something up with that. I appreciate the support there, Multi-Zero. And yeah, I'll work on the audio. The audio is probably fine, but I need to lower the background stuff. The unmediated mind says, when I'm eventually recycled, all my eco-sins will be forgiven. If there were only a way to make sure I get turned into Soylent Green, I'd be so excited. I think that might be legal in California. And it's worth remembering that the founder of Earth Day, the unicorn killer, I believe his name was Einhorn, He composted his girlfriend. I mean, it doesn't get greener than that. Just recycle her. I think they found her in a trunk, just composting. But that's the guy who founded Earth Day. Soylent Green is ma'am. Yeah. There's been some terrible developments in that direction. We were looking at, I think 2021, there's a lot of cannibalism stuff going on. The other day, someone mentioned Starlink satellites, and I brought up this thing, and I'm pretty convinced I'm right here. If anybody wants to look deeper into it, a few summers ago, I think it was 2018, I was on a long walk, hot day, it was like triple digits, and I saw one of these loons, these massive, gigantic, clear balloons, like way up there. And I followed it for a few hours, and these loons were supposed to be a solution to getting internet everywhere, anywhere in the world, rural areas, etc. Basically, everything that Starlink does, Loon could have done. But Loon just kind of disappeared. It wasn't viable. So people instead are relying on orbiting metal boxes going 17,000 miles per hour because that makes more sense than a balloon or a series of balloons on a conveyor belt kind of system that goes in a circuit. So circuiting balloons or orbiting space boxes, it doesn't matter. It's the same idea from on the ground as far as a user experience. But I think it's very conspicuous that Loon, which seemed like a viable solution to providing ubiquitous internet coverage, gets phased out. And then in comes Starlink satellites. Seems a little, I don't know, conspicuous to me. So what I think they did is this. Like, hey, let's continue this illusion of orbit by just saying that we're giving them satellite internet when we'll be using loons. Now, this was a research development project by X, formerly Google X. That's kind of interesting. X Development was a semi-secret research and development facility founded by Google. X has its headquarters half a mile from Alphabet's headquarters. There's an interesting connection there, the whole X thing. But it just seems like this was very practical, ideal even, and I'm very curious that one would go and the other would replace it. We're talking about stratospheric balloons, and it says that they could control the latitudinal, longitudinal positions of the high altitude balloons, like 12 miles up. They would just adjust the volume and intensity of the internal gas, which would be helium or hydrogen. But no, I did actually see some of these, and that's what caused me to look into it. I probably wouldn't have noticed otherwise. P. Trippa says, open phones for open minds tomorrow. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Right now it's the IPS evening Deprogram, but we may do open phones. I saw this on the cover of Drudge. He's back. It's Donald Trump looking like Jack Nicholson in The Shining, but it's another Kubrick reference. And the forthcoming simulated head wound, psyop, is going to be something that I think was directed or articulated by Kubrick, even though he's not here to formally direct it. I think it's probably going to be, if anyone, Christopher Nolan. But this is my question for those of you who, this is just a question, I guess. I don't know if anyone here thinks this is serious. Does the so-called depopulation problem balance out the border crisis? Like, oh no, too many people. Wait a minute, there's not enough people, we're running out of people. Like, those of you who are worried that we're running out of people, now we have an influx of people and you don't want them. Like, shouldn't you want them? Or are they going to die over here? I mean, it doesn't make sense. G33 says a church collapsed in Connecticut today, looks kind of fishy. Everything looks fishy if it comes from the mainstream. I mean, they are liars. My assessment when it comes to is this a psyop usually boils down to, I think it starts with, one, is it fakeable? And two, is there an obvious and immediate and immediately implemented political agenda attached to the event? And that usually is the case. Like, more often than not, it's intentional if they're reporting on it, because they're catering to the attention economy. They're not reporting something if it doesn't have, everything they report is bait. And everything they report is worldview reinforcement. And I'm hearing more and more people in the mainstream using the term psyop. Here's Jack Bumble and Charlie KKK Kirk with Turning Point USA talking about Nick Haley, and they're calling this a media psyop.
Is sharing clips of this, laughing in the faces of Republicans, of Trump voters, of Trump supporters. They're saying that, look, there's people registered to vote in your primary who are against Donald Trump. They think he's anti-democracy. So this is already being, Charlie, we are witnessing in real time the birth of a media psyop.
A media psyop. So we can hardly use the word psyop anymore. Dinah South says, if you were born in an S-hole country, why not die in America? Yeah. And if you're lucky and rich enough, why not die on Mars, as Musk said? But which is it? Are the anti-immigrants, are they mad about an influx of people? Or are they mad about the depopulation? Or both? And doesn't one problem solve the other? It seems like one of them just sort of cancels the other. I'm just trying to look for silver linings. All right, let's go through my Twitter feed. There's a lot of things that earmarked. Is truth subjective? The blind men and the elephant. This might be interesting to look into later. Many of you may be familiar with this concept of, it's a parable of several blindfolded people who encounter an elephant for the first time and they all try to figure out what it is. But the whole idea was it's too big for any one person to come to a conclusion. And I think that's where we're at when we're looking at media. And it's oftentimes I've likened it to a puzzle. Like it's not something that one person could come to a total cohesive view of because it's so compartmentalized. But looking back at that 9/11 clip I played earlier, it's a sure bet that nobody there had any clue about the utter fakeability, the abject fakeability of reality itself. And you're looking at a bunch of spellbound mind control victims. I mean, it's a psy war, it's a mental war. It's like, okay, the worst part of it's not necessarily true, but it gives us a little insight into how extensive this thing is. Oh, and by the way, all this Trump assassination stuff, this goes way back. Here's another one from 2018. Photo of Trump in crosshairs with red laser dots at a Christmas lighting sparks assassination fears among supporters. Several red laser dots. Oh, like from a laser sight. He actually had red laser dots flickering on his face during their White House Christmas speech, and the so-called, quote, paranoid supporters thought it was some kind of a threat. Yeah, what you're seeing, I believe, is just more examples of predictive programming. You don't have this with anybody else. Isabel Ann says, I'm annoyed by the trustafarian snowflakes moving to New York City more than the immigrants. Well, for every person pushing fear of immigrants, you're going to have another person inviting them in. Like, so this is not something that's ubiquitous. It's not uniting. Governor Greg Abbott says that the federal government has broken a compact between the United States and the states. Now, I did find a video on X. I believe someone had sent this to me earlier today. There's definitely a movie that predicts, I think it came out in 1998. There's another Civil War movie, but it predicts this specific situation as being the thing that lights off the Civil War. This dispute between the federal government, the state governments at the borders. Not a movie I've seen. I'll see if I can find the clip. And of course, that movie by AG, Civil War, that's coming out, which many have pointed out, people are already pre-calling that one out as predictive programming. And I said, hey, you don't have to worry about the Civil War starting until this movie has come out first. Well, they actually moved the date forward. So I think April 12th. So in other words, the Civil War might start sooner than we thought. So this is an HBO film called The Second Civil War, set in a future United States in which immigration has increased, resulting in a fractured polyglot society, which is the fall of the Tower of Babel. Nobody can understand anybody else because there are too many languages. An atom bomb is used on Pakistan, and an international organization brings refugees to Idaho. Jim Farley orders the National Guard to close the borders, and the president turns out to be an ineffectual leader and exploits immigration to fill districts and states with those most likely to vote. So this is 1997, a film about border invasion. Let me play this clip, and the title here is, Has HBO Predicted the Future? Again, either we have a lot of psychics working in entertainment, or entertainment is not separate from the news.
We can see 2 busloads of orphans being unloaded the other side of the border here.
Pakistani orphans where, according to our information, busloads more are expected to arrive today.
Does anybody here speak English?
Does anybody here speak English? And that was a facet of Leave the World Behind, where the main character, Ethan Hawke's character, couldn't rescue someone, couldn't get any information because the internet was down and they couldn't talk to each other.
Kill America! There's nothing left of it anyway!
They've blown up the Statue of Liberty.
I'm ordering you to remove this roadblock. My orders come from the president.
Net has just learned that America is on the brink of civil war.
Something else, too. You can see that they've been hyping the stuff up for a long time. And when people watch this, they probably thought, oh, this is going to happen next week, next month. G33 says, if we're still able to use good discernment, is it still predictive programming? Right. And if it's real time, I call it concurrent programming. What else can you call it? You know, you could call it conditioning, perhaps. I mean, what they're doing is they're boring neural pathways in your mind to get you to accept something extraordinary as though it were ordinary. They're expanding your frame of reference, opening the Overton window. They just removed it entirely. And they're placing things into your frame of reference that would never be plausible there, but because it's constantly saturating your imagination and your mind, it becomes believable. Rapper Tom McDonald is dropping a song with Ben Shapiro tomorrow. That should be fun. Ben Shapiro had a nice long interview with Elon Musk. I don't know if any of you caught this. And Elon Musk has run afoul of many of the internet neo-Nazis because he went to Israel, put on a yarmulke, and basically took a photo op at Auschwitz. So they hate him now. I don't know if he and Ye are still friends. Jack Poso says, invasion is an act of war. Aiding an invasion is treason, that is all. I'm following these agitators. There's so many of them. So here we go. Tomorrow at 9 a.m. it's called Facts. Tom McDonald and Ben Shapiro. So Ben Shapiro's rapping. This should be good. Yeah, this is going to be fire. Breaking, Donald Trump calls for all willing states to deploy National Guard to Texas and start the deportations. He also says that the terrorists are Hannibal Lecters. Let me play this clip.
Mostly young men and large numbers of terrorists. The United States is more vulnerable from inside terror attacks than at any time in its history. Biden is allowing people from prisons and jails. He's allowing people from mental institutions and insane asylums. Silence of the Lambs. Hannibal Lecter, remember?
But McConnell is admitting that Trump
Insane asylums, Silence of the Lambs. That's poetic. Hannibal Lecter. I think he made that up on the spot.
Silence of the Lambs. Hannibal Lecter, remember?
But McConnell is admitting that Trump is saying we don't want this deal. And he is suggesting, he says here, quote, the politics on this have changed.
Now, I remember last year, Trump had said something about how he thinks Hannibal Lecter is a great guy, but he was actually referring to Anthony Hopkins. But he had praised Hannibal last year. So this is kind of interesting. Let me play this one more time.
In jails. He's allowing people from mental institutions and insane asylums. Silence of the Lambs. Hannibal Lecter, remember?
But McConnell is admitting.
Fascinating. Michael Letts posted this. Madam X released on 6/14, Donald Trump's birthday. Madam X is a Madonna album. And if you remember, Madonna did a performance where everyone was in gas masks dying. I think it was called something about the future, and it was not everyone's going to make it to the future. And she's wearing an eye patch with an X through it. So the eye with the X, this coming out on Trump's birthday. What Michael Letts says is Donald Trump was born on 6/14. This world is and has always been about him, their king. Everyone's going to find out soon. Yep. A lot of build-up. Look, decades. I referred to Trackdown 1958. Decades of predictive programming. And it all occurs cohesively within the same fictional universe. Like, for example, they're connected in a like structurally. That's why I say metascript. So Trackdown comes out like May 9th, 1958. Then there's this episode of Quantum Leap where the main character goes back in time to May 10th, 1958, the day after the episode Trackdown came out. That episode is called The End of the World, by the way. But in this Quantum Leap episode, Donald Trump is a 12-year-old in the backseat of a taxi cab. So this theme of Trump, time travel, and he just pervades so many of these these shows. It's not just cameos. We're talking about planting clues, and not to mention he's represented by many other characters. We've often talked about Damian Thorne, Donald Trump, but then there's also the thing with the devil's advocate and his office being used. Zinvella says releasing insane asylum inmates was a theme in Batman Begins. Fascinating. Insane asylum seekers. Yeah, it's comedy though, right? Insane asylum seekers. I don't know. All right, let's continue. Hannibal means, according to Isabel, grace of Baal. What does Isabel mean? No, I'm kidding. Grace of Baal makes perfect sense, though. Baal is Lord, and their primary god, the god of the world, the earth god, is represented by the obelisk. You can refer to him. They refer to him as Osiris, Baal. Baal Earth, I think, is all about this singular, and it's not their only god, but it's this entity that seems to be the centerpiece. Saturn, Moloch, so many different ways they represent it. Developing, Taylor Swift is considering legal action against the deepfake celeb jihad that generated AI images of her that circulated online. Fascinating. I have no interest in looking at those at all. I haven't even looked deeply into her character, but I don't think there's anything about this that isn't staged. Speaking of staged, maybe there's something being staged for the border tomorrow. Here's a short clip from Fox.
Administration to secure our southern border. Joining us now is Texas Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick. Governor, I've already gotten text messages from people who are concerned and hearing that this is just what Biden wants. He wants something to trigger something that will end up, ending up in some type of violence involving states versus the federal government. Are you concerned about that, given...
No, okay, this has already started. I noticed a couple weeks ago there's a story that I didn't see get a lot of traction, probably because it's fake and they didn't, I don't know. But the story was there were 3 people drowning, and the National Guard wouldn't allow the Border Patrol to rescue them. So you already have the story of these 3 martyrs. There's already blood in the water. But again, this is more. And this is Laura Ingram.
How this is changing.
I'm not concerned, Laura. The biggest mistake the Biden administration could make would be confronting law enforcement or our military, our National Guard, at our border, at this park, when we're actually doing the job that the American people want. So if they come down and create a situation, all of America already knows now, they will clearly see that the Democrats are willing to take on a state that is operating under our constitutional right to protect our people and protect this country. I don't think...
Eagle Pass, Texas. There could be some significance to that as well. Michelle Kastner says, I think many of the crisis actors used on January 6th were from a prison. Oh, yeah. And none of the main actors like Q Shaman spent a day in prison. He's a movie star, and he's annoying, and he probably smells like roadkill. But they easily had 1,000 actors. If you haven't followed Wu's news, you can see that before Trump even finished his speech at the Ellipse, the theatrics had begun, and the media was there. They were producing it like a flash mob, like a real-time simulation of a riot. It was not a stimulated riot. It wasn't staged and instigated. It was simulated. It was fake. And if you were a real person, not an actor, not someone out of the prison, dragged up and given some kind of a role, but let's say you're a real person and you're watching Trump speak, and you wanted to go run into the Capitol alongside the shaman and Alex Jones and be a hero, you have a 45-minute walk ahead of you. And most of the action's going to be done by then. It'll be a closed set. They had a closed set. So if you think that something's going to happen at the border and everything's going to go kinetic and it's going to be a big fight, no. It's the same movie production company that gave you January 6th that's going to give you the Civil War. It's not going to suddenly become real. It's never going to go kinetic. It's always going to be this. And look, I refer to Saul Alinsky Rules for Radicals number 9. The threat of the thing is more terrifying than the thing itself. They can continue again and again, cycle after cycle, decade after decade, lash the public with the same types of, it's almost like they're whipping people into submission. And whenever people start to wake up, they just hit them again at the same exact thing. And people keep falling for it. But they never go through with it all the way. It's always the threat, it's always a build-up, and that's it. Okay, let's see what we have here. More?
Even Biden will make that mistake. We're not looking for a confrontation. We're looking for them to do their damn job and protect the lives of Texans and Americans and protect the borders in this country. And for every person that's died of a fentanyl overdose, for every person that's been murdered by MS-13, for every law enforcement officer who's been killed in the
Yeah, shout out to George Floyd, right? That's the right-wing narrative that George Floyd was killed by fentanyl, therefore China, therefore Biden, because open borders. Another bifurcated psyop. Right-wing believes, oh, he was killed by China, open borders, and fentanyl, and Biden. Left-wing believes, oh, he was killed by systemic racism, Western chauvinism, and the police. When went to the Eagle Pass border crossing to see what's really going on, Musk posted on the X app Thursday, oh yeah, that's right, when he was wearing a backward cowboy hat. Live streamed on his platform and said he was going to look around and eyeball the situation to get the real story. Elon Musk turns citizen journalist, goes to Eagle Pass. I remember this, thinking how similar it was to when John Kerry went into a Walmart and he's like, where do I get me a hunting license? Trying to act like one of the people. It was clownish, but here's Musk, and I'm pretty sure Elon, let me see if there's any articles about it. I'm pretty sure his hat was on backward. Oh yeah, oh no, it was the correct way. He was mocked for wearing it backward, but it was actually the right way, according to Business Insider. He was mocked on his own social media for wearing his cowboy hat backward. Well, which is it? I don't know enough about cowboy hats. G33 says Cloward and Piven. Yeah, that was like, what, half a century ago? It's like they're going to use the illegal immigrants to overwhelm our social services in the hospitals, and they're going to bring down the capitalist system. That was decades ago. And there's many more people. But again, I'm wondering, why is it a problem that there's millions of immigrants coming in? Isn't that a solution to the depopulation that a lot of people imagine is happening? Now again, I don't believe in the population crisis. I don't believe there's too many. I don't believe there's not enough. I don't have enough information to conclude anything like that. And anyone who is concluding it is doing so on limited information. You got it off the screen. Here's a short clip from Civil War. New release date is April the 12th.
19 states have seceded. The United States Army ramps up activity. The White House issued warnings to the Western forces as well as the Florida Alliance.
The three-term president assures the uprising will be dealt with swiftly.
Let me know if you want to try anything on.
Are you guys aware there's like a pretty huge civil war going on all across America?
We just try to stay out.
This is funny, actually, now that I think about it. So this is a story about journalists traveling across the country during an escalating civil war, and he's looking incredulously at this cashier at a clothing store. Hey, you know there's a civil war, and she's like, yeah, it's for the best. She doesn't care. The journalist cares. She's like, you're not triggered. You're not freaking out. And this is kind of funny. It reminds me of the whole COVID thing. Like, if they do a civil war in America, it's going to be like out of sight, out of mind. The only people who are going to hear about it or talk about it are celebrities and, I guess, crisis actors. And then you'll hear it from the news. But the way she sounds to me, this is how like an auto hoaxer would sound during a civil war.
If you want to try anything on.
I guess aware there's like a pretty huge civil war going on all across America.
We just try to stay out.
That's exactly how I sound every day when some emotionally triggered red pillar asks me why I'm not agitated about, chemtrails or open borders or vaccines or aliens or whatever. I am not. I'm not agitated. I'm not triggered. But civil war, a bunch of guns, bunch of violence. We'll see where it goes. A Q shaman, Jacob Chansley, says Ray Epps got a slap on the wrist because he was a Fed. This is one of their tactics, and it fools truthers. Truthers are all tricked by this. When a Fed calls out another person as a Fed, they're no longer suspect of being a Fed themselves. And Jacob Chansley has somehow managed to put himself above all suspicion, and he's a total credible. He's like a leader. He's on Infowars. He's a credible source. He's legit.
Significant time.
Prosecutors could have come after him with so much more, and they didn't for a reason. And if you look at the way he was treated with kid gloves by the Mockingbird media, if you look at the way he's been treated with kid gloves by the government, if you parallel that with the way that confidential informants that committed very real crimes in their working for the government are treated and have been treated in the past, in my opinion, it's just further evidence that Ray Epps was working for the government the whole time, either as a confidential informant or as some form of a federal agent.
What a joke. And this is for people who are of the belief that January 6th was real. I look at this. This looks faker than World Wrestling Entertainment. None of this looks legit. And their lines are hilarious. January 6th was a hilarious joke. And a lot of people took it too seriously. By the way, I'm kind of breaking into I guess we call it the dinosaur industrial complex. And I'm going to do a series of paintings of dinosaur skulls hurtling through space, because that's likely what happened if you go by the official story. So here's a T-Rex skull. This one's just mounted on a pole. But I put it on eBay, but I'm going to be doing dinosaur bones in space because there's got to be a dinosaur belt. According to the official histories, if we can consider the scientific narrative to be some sort of a history, 66 million years ago, a rock the size of like Mount Everest hit the Earth, and they say that it not only killed the dinosaurs, but it caused a lot of biological matter, including dinosaurs, to spray out into space, and a lot of it gushed onto the face of the moon. So the moon's got dinosaurs. This is science. But I'm pretty sure that they wouldn't only have hit the moon. If there's dinosaurs on the moon, there's dinosaurs in between Earth and the moon. There's got to be a dinosaur belt. I'm waiting for it. Like, I'm waiting for a T-Rex skull to puncture the ISS. That would have been a better ending of the movie ISS. I watched the movie, by the way. There was not one single loose hair. That would have been a dead giveaway. It would have outshined NASA. NASA would have looked silly by comparison if the female astronauts in that movie had hair waving around or sticking straight up. Like, however they would do it, it wouldn't look like hairspray the way that it does on the ISS. But no, they got that one covered. They got that base covered. And I think they only thought of it because of listening to us. This is from Disclosed TV. Britain should, quote, train and equip a citizen army to prepare for war. The head of the army warns. Oh, I see. J. Dig says, I think that Elijah Safer's camera footage is currently staying patriot from an organic organization. People need to quit calling them feds. Oh, yes. There's a lot of people calling Patriot Front feds. which is kind of a lazy dismissal, sort of like Antifa. But I don't know how you would arrive at any other conclusion, but it's like it's almost too easy to just without investigating it or looking into it. It doesn't matter though, because the media will treat them as though they're representative of anybody on the right. Here's Nick Fuentes, and someone asked him, "Do you think that the Patriot Front, are feds?" And the Patriot Front is founded by a guy named Thomas Rousseau, and you can't separate the name Rousseau from the minds that led to the French Revolution. It's all world stage nomenclature. It's all code. But here's Nick Fuentes giving his opinion. Groomer, neo-Nazi Nick Fuentes, or just a Poe.
But I heard, because somebody went to one of those things, and they said that Thomas Rousseau had nice things to say about me. He's the guy that runs Patriot Front. And be that as it may, I mean, listen, everybody should have positive things to say about me because I'm awesome. Like, I'm doing the right thing. The thing is about Patriot Front, I do think it's a honeypot.
Okay, it's a honeypot, which is fair. I mean, they're wearing masks again. And I don't know, were they wearing masks, protesting against masks? That was one of the things that kind of struck me as contradictory. It's like you guys are super anti-mask, but then you wear masks. Okay. And they were introduced onto the world stage on 6/11/2022. 33 of them emerged from the back of a U-Haul. Here's an article from fakeologist.com. Samsung caught faking Zoom photos of the moon. From verge.com. Samsung got caught faking Zoom photos of the moon, and a Reddit post has revealed how much processing the company's cameras apply to photos of the moon, further blurring the line between real and fake imagery in the age of AI. Okay, this is from last March. Samsung was caught faking Zoom photos of the moon. Samsung's smartphone identified a blurry photo of the moon and added detail to create the above image. So their space zoom capable phones have been known for their ability to take these incredibly detailed photos of the moon, but now it's being revealed how much of this is just computational processing. Now this is interesting. It's like an Oculus in a sense. So you're looking through the lens at something and you're getting something that's not quite there, like a filter. What does fake mean in this scenario? This is from The Verge. It's a tricky question to answer. We can say for certain that our understanding of what makes a photo fake will soon change, as it has in the past to accommodate digital cameras. Now, someone on Reddit tore this thing apart. So the S23 Ultra was adding details that weren't there before. So you have a photo of the moon with no detail at all, but the resulting picture is crisp. There's no upscaling of blurry pixels, no retrieval of lost data. There was just a new moon, a fake one. Interesting. You know, someone had suggested, what if they put some kind of program in your phone to where you point your camera up at the sky and you see the ISS going across the moon? Like, could they put that in there? In a way, yeah, absolutely. Why not? I think it would be easy. It says here, at this point, I think most people would agree that the image is fake. The difficulty here is that the concept of fakeness is a spectrum rather than a binary. I've called this reality fluidity. We are now reality fluid. Real, fake, yeah, that's a false binary. Like all categories we use to divide the world, the standard of realness is usually defined by information received by an optical sensor, light captured when you take a photo. Okay, so there's some mental gymnastics here, and you go through it, you can arrive at, yeah, okay, it's real-ish. Interesting. And it wasn't like they told you, hey guys, when you buy this phone, it's going to give you a really remarkable version of the moon because it can't deliver it, but we can augment it. No, somebody had to find out about it. Okay, continuing. This is a short clip from, looks like a MAGA rally, and someone is asking, a reporter is asking this Trumper if he believes we went to the moon. And he answers like a flat earther without saying it specifically.
Do you think the Earth is round or flat?
I know we didn't go to the moon.
We didn't go to the moon?
No, we didn't go to the moon.
Why do you say that?
Because you can't get out of the atmosphere.
Really? What do you mean?
Why don't we go look at underwater or past the ice? That's where it's at. They want you to look up. They don't want you to look on our own ground.
They don't want you to look on the ground. They want you to look up. Interesting point. He seems to be alluding to, I don't know, an ice wall, I guess, or at least Antarctica, described as icy, but perhaps just a border that you reach before getting to the area that's not on our maps. That's what he's alluding to.
Earth is round.
That's where it's at. They want you to look up. They don't want you to look on our own ground.
Think the Earth is flat?
I don't know.
I think he does.
He says, do you think the Earth is flat? He said, I don't know. Now, that's a smart answer. I don't know. I don't know that it's a CGI ball. I don't know that outer space is a bad science fiction movie. When you get up really high, it just takes on all the qualities of a really poorly made sci-fi movie from the 60s. Oh yeah, outer space is pixels. We're in a simulation, a literal computer simulation, and if you go above the Karman line, you might see glitchiness. You'll see green screens behind your hand, little bits of harnesses just in your periphery. Things look faker up there. Or it's fake, and they're really bad at faking it. Take your pick. Either space is very fake in its qualities, where you can, and glitchy, or nobody's actually quote in space. And we have a lot of reason to point out. I could just point out one thing in particular. This is an Achilles heel. I watched the movie The ISS. They went on a spacewalk. It was crystal clear out in space. Why wouldn't it be? Yet, if you look at any spacewalk conducted by the ISS, it's underwater, and the light diffusion, the light loss, gives it away. You can compare, contrast the spacewalk video and the lighting quality to that of scuba divers at night. It's the same lighting, not a coincidence. Jake the A-hole says that was a terrible answer to his question. Yeah, it was, but the thing is, he said, I don't know. And I think I don't know is way better than saying, I know it's a pizza with a dome because the Bible, and science is the devil. Like, I'm sorry, that doesn't cut it. We don't have enough information to know it's a ball, much less anything else. But all we've observed and experienced is flat, motionless. Anybody who says otherwise is a lying pervert. Because the only time you've seen it bent is when you've looked through the screen put in front of your face by the news benders who also bend your horizon. Okay, let's see. Here's a short video. NASA coffee cup designed not to spill in 0G. It looks like something I wouldn't want to be seen with. It's kind of an unusual looking bit of plastic. It just... I don't know how to describe that. Some kind of high-tech contraception device. I don't know. It's a really bizarre thing, but it was fake. Nothing to worry about there. Speaking of fake, Andrew Tate keeps talking about breaking free from the Matrix, and someone said he looked like Anton LaVey, much closer to Cypher. He's the guy in the Matrix who sold everybody out for a steak. He will betray you for a fake steak. Hey, we've been joined by Jungle Jim. Thanks for joining. Zinvella says a proper cup of coffee. Yeah, that's right. The proper cup of coffee. In fact, if we can find that clip, Don Petit is drinking coffee from this plastic space liquid container. It's basically like a clear thing, but the coffee isn't really there. It's literally like an overlay. And it doesn't line up when he moves the container around. Like the coffee's falling outside of the cup and all. It's Just bad overlapped layers. It's video layer compositing. Yeah, that's what it looked like, unmediated mine. It looked like a female urinal. I'm sorry, but that's what it looked like. And that's not the thing that Don Petit was using. Okay, moving on. Uh, from Eyes on the Right, white nationalist Stu Peters used Elon Musk's trip to Auschwitz to push Holocaust denial. Yeah, Elon Musk has made a lot of his followers mad. He has he has sided with their enemy. And the thing is, these individuals may not represent you. Maybe they're from an entirely different universe, but the way that they're branded, it's like they are the right wing. They are MAGA. MAGA and Q has just become such a massive smear operation against anybody who doesn't believe the obvious BS of the mainstream. So, Tucker Carlson has been pointed out by Tia Gloria as a woman because of the way he's walking here. And I'm not into this topic. I really am so done with the whole nutty transvestigationist things, mainly because they've accused me based on just my skull. And it's like, you can't win with these people. Like, if I had a more pronounced brow ridge, you would say it was an implant. You can't win. It's unfalsifiable. So according to Tia, she says gait, which means the way someone walks. So according to her, the way that Tucker is walking right here reveals him to be a woman. Okay, a biological woman. Well, I've never seen a biological woman walk like this. Have you? Do women walk like Tucker Carlson? I don't think so. But according to transvestigationists, yep, real women walk like Tucker Carlson. Make sense of that if you can. Apparently he sold out. Not sold out. I mean, we know he sold out. He sold out an arena in Canada. I mean, he's a remarkable entertainer and he's a very funny man. And I think he sold out like 8,000 tickets. He's up there in Canada. I would like to go listen to it. Probably more interesting than listening to Ben Shapiro go total fangirl over. I mean, really, he was giddy and almost squealy over Elon and laughing at everything Musk said. Hero worship. Like, when are you going to take us to Mars in your big rocket? That rocket is merely a ritual prop, and it represents the severed phallus of the god that Elon Musk secretly worships when nobody's looking. And that's true. NASA is the exoteric cover of Mystery Babylon, updated for the space age. Okay, let's see what we have here. Scott Adams from Dilbert says, quote, "Women don't understand that the Civil War has already started, but men live in a continuous state of violence." This is the guy who does Dilbert. "We size up every threat and we have a plan to kill it first. We live in that war and it never stops. The battle to defend Texas and the homeland is in full throw. Decisions have been made. Men have evaluated the threat. I don't expect American men in uniforms to start shooting at each other. We've gamed that out. I expect Biden to back down." So how many of you live in a constant state of violence? How many of you are already in a state of civil war? Because I would contend that the perpetual war that we read about, or that was inferred by the 1984 Orwell, I think this is the perpetual war. And like, I'm kind of anti-war. I mean, I don't know if that makes me weak, but I'm not in a state of internal war whatsoever. Like, I think it's almost laughable. And I'm not afraid of any of the conventional fears, which most of them I've kind of ruled them out as nothing more than superstition. I mean, clown world seems more about holding people's attention by any means necessary. Let's see what we have going on here. Thrustazar says, "I can't tell a difference between Tucker Carlson and Alex Stein." Oh, Alex Stein, because he's never going to go away. That's what we. Alex Stein is a crisis actor. He's worse than Robbie Parker. Did you see him cry at that last shooting? Was it the bowling alley? No, it was the Iowa one. The Iowa shooting, where only one person got shot. But he's a total crisis actor. Crisis act whore. He's the dollar store Tucker Carlson. But don't underestimate him. He's been in reality TV, staging fake events for entertainment purposes long before he was in politics. In fact, if you want to ascend in politics, you got to be a good liar and a good actor. And if you're experienced with reality TV, there you go. Yeah, the new movie Civil War comes out on 4/12, directed by the guy that did 28 Days Later, zombie apocalypse. And what caused the zombie apocalypse? Because this is also part of the foreshadowing. In 28 Days Later, the zombie apocalypse is caused by a rage virus. So think about it. A mind virus is a rage virus. You get an idea that makes you so mad you want to go shoot the invaders. You want to go shoot the Democrats. You want to go shoot the deep state. What they have done is they have created in the minds of the public a believable pretext for somebody to go out and pop off as an extremist. Oh, look, they went on X. They went on Discord. They caught a rage virus like Robert Card who showed up at the bowling alley. They said he was on Twitter. He went in the Twitter bubble, then he picked up a gun and he went off shooting. We've had many examples in the last year of people directly. There's a pipeline from fringe internet to school shooting, and there's a bunch of them, or supermarket shooting or bank shooting, but they go online, they get a gun, they go shooting. So if you connect the dots here, 28 days later, rage virus, everybody locks down. Now, civil war. Well, what is that? Half of the country raging at the other half. What would they have us do if they were simulating a civil war? It would be a lockdown. So I think that's what we're looking forward to here. I think they may pull off some kind of civil war psyop, but it'll be kind of like the summer of 2020. Okay, let's see what else I have here. Unmeted Mind says, I have a couple of neighbors eyeing my skinny. I'm fasting so they lose interest. Yeah, Alex Jones has already earmarked his neighbors, specifically liberals. He says he's going to eat them like corn on the cob. Back in 2020. He's prepared to feed his daughters the meat taken from his butchered neighbors if we have another lockdown. I think it was 6 weeks in last time. A Big Fish posted this. The FBI staff knows what's coming. Be prepared. So apparently we have here, quote, leaked docs coming from a couple of FBI Director of Intelligence, Criminal Investigation Division, quote, any violation of the nation's immigration laws increase risks, but the surge in numbers of single military-aged males descending upon American cities is alarming and perilous. Yeah, military-aged males is to the right what bowl-cut shooters are to the left. It's an imagined threat. And here's another thing. I hear all these right-wingers who are also like, oh, we're running out of people. Well, here's some more people. They're like, oh, there's not enough men. Men have been emasculated, and we need more men. Well, here you go. You have your military-age men coming from other countries. You solve two problems: depopulation and the lack of masculine American men, if that's what your issues are. More traditional values, I'm sure, are being imported. Just bring in the Taliban. Merge them with the MAGA ban. It's a win for everybody. Maybe open borders is something they should take more seriously as like a solution. All right, moving on. This has been a big story for some time about this Lloyd Austin, who supposedly was in a hospital. They believe he died. And he speaks up on a video after having disappeared since, I think, back in early January, January the 3rd, actually, earlier this month. And they believe he died during a Russian missile strike. And so when he comes out and he speaks, everyone runs to it's a deep fake. And weirdly enough, though, in this entire video conference where this guy who was believed to be dead suddenly shows up, the chyron at the bottom of the screen blocks his face the entire time like a mask. Very convenient. Like if you're going to put a deep fake of somebody up there and you hide the bottom third of their face, it might make the illusion a little more believable. We may look into that. I have some information on that. Let's see. G33 says, I won't eat my neighbors unless they were grass-fed. Right. I read a book on the subject. It was called Contingency Cannibalism, Super Hardcore Survival Tactics or something. And it suggested that you would be better off forming a roving band of cannibals than going out and waiting in line, food lines, depending on government. And they suggested that if any of your non-cannibal neighbors show up at your door because they have a problem with it, you could just consider it free meat delivery. Very gruesome book, dark humor, very, very morbid humor, but it it paints a very dark picture. And at the time that I read it, this was a while ago, I found it plausible, believable. I like, yeah, if the power goes out, people are going to go after each other. And a lot of people believe this. The fear of the blackout isn't that, oh, I'm not going to have the internet for a few days. No, the fear is that your neighbors are going to come after you. I think that's part of what the zombie movies have been about, fear of the other, quarantine, lockdown, everybody's a threat. This is where it's at. It says, my neighbors are elderly. Expiration dates have passed. Right. Well, look, the power elite do believe in cannibalism, but it's more like psychological and it's also social, it's philosophical. I think they like the idea that everyone believes we're in a zero-sum game, and if one person gains, it's because somebody else lost. Creates a lot of envy, class envy. Kim.com says the US election is going to be wild. The deep state will do anything to prevent being dismantled and their crimes against America exposed. How does this still work in 2024? They said this like 8 years ago. I agree with them that the election is going to be a wildly entertaining production, but the deep state doesn't exist. There is only the state. There is not a deep state. It's a false dialectic there to make you think that there's a shallow state that will save you. No, they're both bad. Limited government used to sound attractive. I used to think about this. It made sense to me. I was like, yeah, limited government, Reagan, the government that governs least governs best, and all this. So limited government versus tyrannical government. It made sense, but now looking at it, there was no limited government because they've already occupied every person's mind at such a deep level. Like, does it matter if they take your guns if they've already taken your minds? They put you into an alternate reality game. If you know, you know. Is Vivek Ramaswamy JFK Jr. in a mask? Some have heard that he might be Trump's VP and immediately decided that no, he's not Eminem in a mask, even though he raps nearly as good. No, he's JFK Jr. Like, who isn't JFK Jr.? Who hasn't been suspected? But yeah, the Kennedy worshippers are hopeful that that's JFK Jr. in a mask. Just the other day, Dan Scavino posted an image, and someone in the back is covering their face, and everyone thinks it's JFK Jr. So it's still happening. Jake the A-hole says, I was trusting the plan the whole time. I knew Trump would come back and put them Democrats in Gitmo. So I remember there was a time where the same people who are now MAGA would say they don't believe in extraordinary renditions. There's got to be due process. We don't want to be picked up by, like the Patriot Act. Everything that scared patriots about the Patriot Act, they want to implement against their enemies. They want to be able to take their enemies away in the middle of a night and throw them in a van. They wake up in Gitmo. They get waterboarded and executed on TV. And that's an interesting part of it too. I don't know how true this is because I haven't read the entire Quran, but there was one Richard Spencer who's like anti-Quran. He was describing how it has this vision of the saved in paradise looking down to hell where the non-believers are burning in a lake of fire and like mocking them, just looking down, which is a pretty disturbing and dark image. But interestingly, the QAnoners want to sit at home watching on TV as all their political enemies get executed by military tribunals. Like they're waiting for that. heads rolling, head after head, like the French Revolution, streets running red with blood. They want that. The MAGA hat, red is probably a part of the symbolism and the build up to this desire for some conflagration, some purge. They are bloodthirsty, believe it or not. And if they say they're not bloodthirsty, then they don't know what execution entails. Like they think, well, because they deserve it, it's not violence, or because they deserve it, which is kind of a backward way of looking at things. All right, continuing. Here's Elon Musk in Auschwitz, Georgia, hanging out with Ben Shapiro. Stu Peters says he got the call and he caved. Commenter says Biden is guaranteed America will never be great again and perhaps we should be less judgmental. Well, MAGA, Make America Great Again, is just the funhouse mirror vision, or rather reflection, of the progressive utopian future. MAGA refers to an idealized past. So idealized past or utopian future, take your pick. They're equivalently fake. They're equivalently deceptive visions designed to lead people into, I think, a perpetual cycle, not going anywhere. This is where it says capitalism is fake, though. Well, the free market activity, I mean, this stuff exists, but even Ayn Rand said it's an unknown ideal because you never have the absence of state interference. But you can, in some areas at some times, it just kind of depends. So I wouldn't say it's, quote, fake, but it's not based on a utopian vision like a worker's paradise or any of that. It's still based on the idea of individuals owning property. And if you notice, it seems like that's one of the main targets of the power elite. Make them hate their property because it's bad for Gaia. Make them feel guilty for property. Make them think that all property is theft. Make them think that they're in a closed system and everything's scarce and every gain happens at the expense of someone else. So a big winner means that a lot of people got screwed over. So every big winner is therefore a victimizer, an oppressor. And you get into this overly simplistic Marxist oppressor versus oppressed worldview. And you see all these useful stooges marching for who they believe to be the oppressed because they've been told that that is the oppressor. It's all a movie. And I don't think I'm being too dismissive of it. I think it's literally an intergenerational psyop, and there's so many of them. Because everything we're living through now is templated on previous psychological operations. And even the word psyop doesn't do it justice anymore. We're going to have to fix that. Oh, really? You don't say? Says Trump retruthed an image of himself praying with his 6 fingers. Yes, that's been connected to the Bible. To, I think, some kind of Nephilim thing, which makes sense. Look at Barron. Allegiant Stadium, by the way, 2/11/2024. The countdown is on. Allegiant Stadium, where the next Super Bowl is going to happen. Who's it going to be? The address is 3333 L. Davis Way. There's some other connections as well having to do with Bane, Batman Returns, some terror attack. As far as Super Bowl predictions, I'm actually looking closely at, I've been looking at Super Bowl 47. That was the one in 2013 that went dark for 33 minutes. And I think that contains a bit of prediction. In other words, like I think that the Super Bowl 47 is a foreshadowing of the election for the 47th president. And the Super Bowl 47 is the one that blacked out for 33 minutes. And if a certain thing about that makes me think it's relevant to this, and that happens to be, I think, mostly the Colin Kaepernick as a quarterback connection, because he's the one who later started kneeling. So you already have the connection between his career martyrdom, the number 33, the darkness. Then when he's the only guy kneeling, he's making a statement, and he becomes the titular head of Revolutionary Marxist Movement, BLM. And then the kneeling becomes very symbolic with the George Floyd event. Then, of course, that was the summer of 2020. A lot going on then. But Beyonce was also performing at Super Bowl 47. And in 2020, she released Black is King, based on Lion King, based on Macbeth. So if you put it all together, I think there's some kind of foreshadowing for this year, and the Blackout Bowl has some kind of correlation to it. And then we have the movie Leave the World Behind, just full of predictive programming, much of it already reflecting in the news, all the drama with airplanes, burning airplanes, doors opening on airplanes, airplanes with loose nuts. And then, of course, the movie Leave the World Behind has a reference to Tesla cars um, being driven on autopilot and clogging up the freeways, just as 1.6 million Teslas are recalled because of their autopilot system. So there's definitely a blackout on the menu. And one more thing, because the blackout movie, Leave the World Behind, anagram, by the way, for Behold the End War Live. The movie is produced by the Obamas, Higher Ground Productions, which probably has a flood reference built into it, the higher ground thing. But when I was trying to remember what the movie was called, I looked up Obama Blackout Movie, and it brought to me on Google a movie from 2013, the year of the Blackout Bowl, a movie called American Blackout, released by National Geographic. And this movie has Obama giving a cameo. It's like, oh, there's a blackout, internet's down, everybody stay calm and listen to the authorities. Obey. That's like the message. Interestingly, Leave the World Behind has a lot of pretty obvious foreshadowing and symbolism. It's just like in your face. And one of the characters has a shirt that says obey. And the designer of that shirt designed the Obama Hope poster. So Obama saying obey, American Blackout. The movie comes out 10 years later about an American blackout. And the general theme of the movie is probably Civil War as well. I mean, that's pretty much it. The idea is that the blackout becomes chaos because we're so dysfunctional as a nation that the ones who shut off the power know that once they do, we will just basically eat each other. And by the way, Atlas Shrugged ends with a blackout. The elite shut everything down and they go off to an island, or rather a base called Atlantis. And once they're there, they pull the plug, shut off the lights. O'Reilly says, if you draw an X from the extreme corners of the mainland US, is there any significance to the intersection point? Well, okay, the Civil War movie comes out on April 12th. On April 8th, we'll have the completion of the X with these solar eclipses, these total solar eclipses crossing America, 2017, 2024. In the movie Leave the World Behind, you had many references to friends and, Matthew Perry's death, drowning. I think it's fake, but he died on 10/28, a lunar eclipse date. His character, Chandler Bing, is born on 4/8. So his death day, lunar eclipse. His character's birthday is the day that America has the X through it. And in the movie, they showed a map of America several times, X'd. I've described its predictive programming and symbolism as ham-fisted. And it was dissected by pretty much everyone that watched it. Yes, WEF released a photo of a bullet hole in a hand holding it's $47. And that was put out by the Atlantic, owned by the son of George Soros. And of all people, Laura Loomer got on top of it. And she says, this is the threat. And we've been talking about this because here you have just one out of a million examples of predictive programming for this Trump head wound. Just one. And they say, oh, it's a threat. Call the FBI. They tell Elon Musk it's a threat. It's like, have you not been paying attention? Show the FBI Back to the Future when Biff Tannen dies. But the reason why Laura Loomer would be drawing attention to it is because when it happens, they don't want people coming over here and finding out it's fake. They want people to believe that George Soros did it. They want the left-right thing happening, and we're not really with that. It's fake until proven real. It's not real until proven fake, because the burden of proof is not yours. It's theirs. Unless you're a propaganda mule. That's a term I've come up with recently. I refer to many people who slavishly carry propaganda, fear, based agitprop around for the mass media unwittingly. I refer to them as propaganda mules. It's a lot of work. You can just shrug the burden. You don't have to carry all that. This is where it's at. Says Chandler dated the lady from Leave the World Behind. Yeah, Julia Roberts. They actually dated together, and there's a number of connections there. Stephen King uploaded a picture of himself in a bunny mask. I don't know why people are creeped out by this. I mean, Stephen King is a totally Trump derangement syndrome. It got him bad. Maybe next to Alec Baldwin, he might be one of the worst. But he didn't shoot somebody with Trump's birthday. That's Trump derangement syndrome. Alec Baldwin shot a guy that had Donald Trump's 6/14 birthday. Unmediated Mind says if Loomer's on top of it, I'm not interested. Well, the thing is, too, it's not even a good example. Like, yeah, you have the 47, yeah, you have the bullet hole, but Trump isn't explicitly identified in it, yet she points at it. So it's not even a good example. Like, I wouldn't give her a passing grade on it. But the fact that she brought it up brings it into the mainstream narrative that they're somehow foreshadowing or hinting what they're going to do, like stochastic terrorism. Just put the idea out there and somebody's going to act on it, which I don't believe in this stochastic terrorism. A couple of other things. The address for the house in Leave the World Behind, it's at a zip code 11963. Just 1963. Right there is a clue. Why? Because the movie was released on 11/22. 11/22, 1963, JFK head wound. Like, I'm entertaining the possibility here that the head wound that is being foreshadowed consistently might actually be the nuke. Like, they're not really going to drop a mushroom cloud. Maybe it doesn't have to be that. Maybe instead it's something as significant. Like, for example, all the predictive programming for Seattle being ground zero for some calamity. Well, it happened with COVID. It just wasn't a nuke. So I'm open to the possibility that this Trump head wound psyop is meant to be some major spectacle that will set off chaos more than a mere mushroom cloud would. And also remember, nukes are fake. And somewhere, I was actually thinking we should sell these, get our hands on some squibs and sew squibs into Trump MAGA hats that say 47 on the side or 45, 47. Like and it wouldn't even have to be like a one-time use. It could be like a reusable MAGA hat squib, which just sprays, blood out the side. It'd be really easy to rig. Salty Siren says, can you imagine having the name Loomer like a stalker? Ooh, that could be a world stage name. She is definitely a looming presence. She is a loomer. She is a stalker. I believe she was kicked out of like 5 or 6 Nikki Haley events. Ron DeSantis, they all have her kicked out. Like, they know when she's coming. Again, this is the IPS evening deprogramming. Navigating the Sea of Irrelevance since 2017. If you want to join the raft, go to ips.monster or join us on Patreon. Tomorrow, Friday, we'll definitely do long form open phones. Saturday as well. The resident skeptic says, don't forget this one for the soft disclosure predictive programming list. Yes, the ISS movie. I need to write a formal review of it. When I watched it, I was looking at the special effects, and I was going to see, are they better than NASA? And they dumbed it down. And if you watch it knowing, if you're visually literate, you can tell real from fake, and you're not fooled by NASA's stupid ISS movie. If you're not tricked by that, if you're not gullible enough to swallow that, I would recommend watching the ISS movie and compare the way they float, compare the hair. You'll see that for the purposes of the movie, they dumbed down the way astronauts normally fly around. Like, this was not Gravity with Sandra Bullock, like cannonballing around, floating around. No, this was totally dialed down. Okay, continuing. The Unmeted Mind says, so the WF is offering $47 for a Hitman. Okay, now there's a connection between a game Hitman, the number 47. There was the shooter at Highland Park. And remember, Parkland High, Nick Cruz was getting a sentence. Then you have a Highland Park shooter on 4/7, or the 4th of July. He had a 47 tattooed on his head, and he was obsessed with Lee Harvey Oswald, and he's a sniper. They even show his mom at Target, and you see the Target. They throw it out there. So you have this 4th of July parade, a shooter with the 47 on his head, a 47 on his car, shooting up people on 4/7. And he's obsessed with Lee Harvey Oswald, and he spends his time going to Trump rallies. So it doesn't take a lot to put this together. Lee Harvey Oswald, foreshadowing, but it gets more. Highland Park, Parkland High. JFK went to Parkland Hospital after he was shot. So we've been picking up on a lot of clues that, yes, there's something coming. A loom is a weaver. Oh, that's actually good. A weaver. What does it say outside of the Bohemian Grove? They have a sign. I think it says, oh yeah, weaving spiders come not here. That's a motto of the Bohemian Grove. And that's taken from Shakespeare's A Midsummer's Night's Dream. Okay, that's right. Act 2, Scene 2, Shakespeare, here it is. A Midsummer Night's Dream. Weaving spiders come not here. It's the club motto of the Bohemian Grove. You can see it on the outside of their facility. The words surround the owl. We need to get a 40-foot stone penguin. I think we could have a interesting, annual gathering. All right, let's continue. A lot of people are talking about Laura Loomer. She's one of my favorite trolls. She really is. She is a troll, a provocateur. This is where it's at. It says, Tim, have you heard about the cult? 6 people are following a YouTuber who's in jail for sex abuse. Weird story. 6 people are missing following a locked up YouTuber. No, put a link. I'll look into it. We'll investigate that. A YouTube cult? Okay, I'm continuing through my Twitter feed. There already here says the name Colin Kaepernick. Oh, you can anagram, take out of it, Kraken. Well, I mentioned Colin Kaepernick and him being the titular head of BLM. Something else to consider, the name Colin and Kaepernick derives from Nicholas Copernicus, Copernican revolution. You find a lot of revolution symbolism, a lot of Christ typology built into the world stage character of Colin Kaepernick, quite a lot. He even has an 11/3 birthday, which is another Kraken Day reference. Okay, we're continuing. The other day we had finding cognitive harmony in the mind war. So the reason why I am bringing up the red pill alarmism in a very critical way is that I think that it's safe to say at this point that the mind war is something you have to believe in, and they don't want a culture of disbelief. They don't want skeptics suspending judgment. They want you emotionally plugged in. If you're plugged in because you believe things are worse than they are, like you don't see it, you didn't experience it, but you believe it, that dissonance between your internal concept of the world and the real thing, because you have internalized lies, that dissonance is the mind war. So if you buy into the mind war at an extreme level, you're not just a blue pill or dreaming, but you wake up to the nightmare. You either go woke, where now everybody's racist and everything's oppressive, or you go red pill, where everything's basically going to hell in a handbasket. Both of these are nightmare scenarios. If you exist in the nightmare scenarios, you're in a state of war, inner conflict. The blue pillars are in a state of apathy. They know the war is there, but they go deep into slumber so they don't have to face it. So you got sleepers, and then you have those having the nightmare. But I think it's a completely viable option to opt out of it. I think the only true anti-war position is skepticism of the world stage as a model, the worldview it promulgates. And this level of skepticism means non-engagement, inactivism, and it's the only true conscientious objection to the war, because the war is, again, mind war. So finding cognitive harmony in the mind war is not only possible, I think it's actually a desirable outcome. And I have just described recently, like in the last year, what we're doing is really just a rediscovery of the original form of skepticism advocated by Piro, which simply meant suspending judgment for things you don't have the facts for. And it led to a state which they called ataraxia, translated as tranquility, a lucid state characterized by ongoing freedom from distress and worry. So I'm not worried. Does that make me a bad person? And many will say, yeah, it's like you're not God fearing, you're not globe fearing, you're not running for the hills, therefore you're bad, because your lack of alarm means you're reducing the collective's readiness for the big thing. And my take on it is that I don't think there's any real use to being in a state of agitation. I don't think you need to be overreacting. It even suggests here that this was the ideal state for soldiers entering battle. So even if stuff does go kinetic, do you want to follow the person who's panicking, who can't control their emotions? Or do you want to follow somebody level-headed, like an auto hoaxer? Like, 'cause I'm not triggered by what I see on the screen. I am way more level-headed than somebody who's plugged into the current thing and overreacts and over-emotes about a bunch of fake dead kids who don't exist in Maui or wherever they happen to be, the fake dead kids of the month club. These martyr cults, endless, just endless array of martyrs and victims and causes and current things, all of it fake. Okay, continuing here. Going through your comments. Isabel Ann says, every other store in my neighborhood, suddenly a cannabis store. Yeah, I notice a lot of the gas stations here have converted into cannabis stores. It's kind of surreal. And I think there's a reason to it. Like, I mean, if we're looking at the sole purpose of the power elite is keeping everyone mentally plugged in to this world stage, as I call it, it's not just the media that comes to the screen, the entertainment, the ubiquitous presence of mediation that the massified mind is attached to, but this would also, I think, involve all the drugs, specifically the drug culture, how it's imbibed and all of that. So there's no way this is an accident. So then I would ask why. Why, how does it serve the interests of the power elite to have everybody stoned? And I think along with it, I've noticed a trend in energy drinks going from these sugar-heavy drinks and your, outdoor sports, going out in the world, snowboarding, skateboarding, that's gone. And now there's sugar-free drinks filled with like nootropics, smart drugs, heavy doses of stuff designed to improve cognition, memory, focus, and concentration. So I'm looking at the two, and it's almost like they're trying to get people into the right state of mind to be comfortable sitting in front of a screen 24/7, living in the metaverse. I think that's what we're seeing. 777 is 666 says Miss Elliott said she would invite aliens to her own halftime show. Well, I'm convinced now that the alien invasion story about we become one world when there's no more nations and we're all just one, grays descend. I think the gray is a symbol for everybody mixed. Because what is gray? Black and white, the extremes mixed. And the concept of the aliens is they're advanced humans, humans from the future, humans who've evolved and who have transcended our worldly differences. Nations, ethnicities, races, gender, all of it's gone. Now we're all the same, grays. So the gray as an ideal, the gray state, they come down because we're at war with each other because of our differences, so now we're all one, we're all the same. How is that any different than the idea of opening all borders and dissolving the concept of sovereign nations for the purposes of what? Ending war. So I think that the alien invasion is meant to, I don't know, in some way it's a parallel story. And it's not a coincidence that the right wing is xenophobic against people coming, invaders coming across the border, and they're scared of the hypothetical aliens. It's too perfectly scripted, so I'm looking deeper into it, but I've been thinking about this today. Okay, let's see. 777 says Allegiant Stadium could refer to a giant Nephilim. Right. Well, the Super Bowls are always big. They generally happen around Candlemas or Imbolc, the beginning of February. The word, I think it's is it Celtic or Gaelic? What is the word Imbolc? It means in milk, and it refers to the weaning of the sun god, St. Bridget's Day, a Gaelic traditional festival, the beginning of spring. But if you look at the way it's celebrated, it has to do with the weaning, the milk. This is why in the green field you had Janet Jackson with the nipple, the breast reveal. That was, I believe, that was a celebration of St. Bridget's Day. And there's other elements to that specific Super Bowl. So we're talking about Super Bowls, and they're all pagan ceremonies. I mean, last year it was Rihanna, and it was all about the whore of Babylon, the Scarlet Witch, the red, the Super Bowl mystery Babylon fertility rite is actually what you saw. When the male dancers came out all dressed up in white like PPE, and she's there in red, it was an inverse of the performance of Heart Part 5 by Kendrick Lamar, where he comes out in white with a crown of thorns, and then the dancers are red, and they cover him with blood. It was a Christ Magdalene performance between the two. But yeah, the Super Bowl last year, total thelemic mystery Babylon fertility rite. So what's it going to be this year? A lot of suggestions here. It's going to be some kind of attack or something. But, that's just too vague. Is it going to be a nuke, alien invasion? I mean, you have Fallout Vegas. And who's it going to be? I haven't been following. Here we go. Fallout New Vegas. And the image on Fallout New Vegas happens to have a Space Needle-like image back there. And the Space Needle image has been synonymous with a lot of the nuke symbolism. And it's something worth looking at in and of itself. It's a New Age obelisk designed to represent a UFO. And when you look in the symbolism of the one in Seattle, they say it's 42 seconds to get to the top. The UFO is 42 meters wide. A UFO adds to 42, by the way. But it's the same symbol as the obelisk, the symbol of resurrection, salvation, but just like a rocket. The rocket goes to space. The obelisk represents the God's ascension to the heavens. And here you have a UFO tractor beam built into it. Same symbol, saves you from the world. Gorilla says Hannibal Lecter had 6 fingers on one hand. Now, why is the AI giving people 6 fingers is my question. Fictional people. In Silence of the Lambs, Hannibal Lecter is described as having a mid-ray duplication polydactyly on his left hand, which he later removes as part of a cosmetic surgery to disguise himself. So he has a duplicated middle finger. And that's awkward. You don't have a middle finger if you have 2 middle fingers, do you? You have a space and 3 on each side. So you got 2 middle fingers. Okay, interesting connection there. Yeah, Trump is going on these long ranting speeches, and he's being taken out of context, his clips. They're trying to make it sound like he's going crazy. All right, let's continue. I had a number of things earmarked I want to get to tonight. Here we go. The Matrix Has You 2024. I'm going to play this clip here. trying to remember where I found. Oh, here it is. No, I'm not going to play that right now. It's too long to go into. I have a lot of things bookmarked I want to get to tonight. That's not a high priority. The topic of tonight, by the way, or the title of the live stream, does the depopulation agenda balance out the border crisis? Valid question. In fact, answer in the chat here. Yes or no. Does the open border crisis mitigate the lack of males in America, real men? And does the depopulation crisis kind of make it not a crisis that we have too many people coming in? Like, is this a self-correcting problem? This is where it's at, says yes. It's like I'm terrified because 30 million illegals came in. But then I'm also terrified because the WEF is exterminating everybody. Or are they only exterminating Americans? I mean, you can't really, I'm sorry, but some of these things are mutually contradictory. Portal Complex says everyone needs an auto hoaxer friend. Hey, the plan for this year is to do a tour. We have a pretty good basis, I believe, for taking the tank out onto the road. And I want to do Auto Hoaxology 101 book readings in every major city. And I'm going to make it happen starting here. I have to order a new stack of books. And probably in the next couple of weeks, I might just put it on Amazon. But I wanted to make sure that everyone here had a hardback copy first before I made it available for mass consumption. And I might even do a few little updates, maybe a few corrections or additions, expanding the glossary for sure. Look, Auto Hoaxology 101 is worth it alone just for the glossary at the back and some of the new terms I'll be adding, propaganda mules. That needs to be in there. But the plan is to do a book reading and invite certain key individuals and then have a discussion where what we're talking about is relevant to the book. Like, for example, we're talking about the fakeability of world stage events, and I'll be drawing from the various concepts and axioms that we have put together in this book. Portal Complex says, Tucker dropped this in Alberta. He said the Roman circuses can be in your mind. He said that? My Third Eye says Alabama just executed a guy with nitrogen, allegedly. Right. Strange. I was thinking about this actually. I saw this earlier. And it's like they make such a big deal about these prisoners being executed, but then all day long on Twitter you see like, oh, people getting pushed in front of subways, and I see all kinds of like meaningless, pointless deaths of people who don't deserve it. And then we really give a damn about these others. All right, let's see what else we have. I have to make sure that we're caught up on everything because it's been a couple of days. We talked about Taylor Swift and her 33-year-old stalker. Oh, we have a picture of him. She's got a 33-year-old stalker, and he's probably the happiest man on earth right now because of all those AI pictures that have leaked. I'm sure there's an agenda behind that. What did he do, by the way? What did the guy who got executed do? I didn't read deep into the story. Jay Digg says 30 tons of fertilizer still missing from that train last spring. Yeah, somewhere there's a Timothy McVeigh ready to strike. That's what we're supposed to believe. The Final Battle, 1984 V. Someone put this together. Donald Trump keeps talking about the final battle. This presidential race having been described as a final battle. And if you remember, he kicked it off the day after Netflix released Waco, American Apocalypse. And he launched his campaign from Waco, and he called it the final battle. So we have all this biblical stuff attached to it. Well, the final battle was also the title of the last season of V, the movie about reptilian aliens revealing themselves. I think that's the basic story. They invade, they look like people, but you can peel their skin off and they're reptoids. We had a conversation in Discord today about Cop City, and I had to point out that Cop City was a hoax. In other words, it was staged. And I know this because I was watching Avatar 2 for review purposes. And I realized, okay, Avatar 2 is about these Atlantean types, this water city. But Atlanta had this drama between the police wanting to cut down 80 acres of forest to build a cop training ground, and the environmentalists protested against them by throwing rocks and sticks. Now, one of them was shot through the palms of his hands while he was sitting cross-legged, so this martyr. But the more I looked into the story, the more I recognized that it mirrored the movie Avatar 2 about these Marines moving into this jungle moon, and the tree people fight them with spears and rocks. And the subtext of Avatar 2 is basically indigenous rising up against the West. People defending the earth, or rather the jungle, against the modern incursion with their toxic masculinity and their guns. And their short hair, because they're disconnected from nature, whereas the long hair Na'vi can plug their hair into the trees or into the fish and talk to Gaia. Well, this is the basic story of Avatar 2, played out on the streets of Atlanta between environmentalists and the police. Now, again, it was about a capitalist invasion on their moon that they were overthrowing. And Avatar 2, The Way of Water, has them defending from encroaching humans, and the movie makes a point to show toxic masculinity killing Mother Earth. And they're all cops and Marines. In Atlanta, they call themselves forest defenders. Statement from the family, Manuel Turan, killed, both his hands, left and right, show exit wounds in the palms. And he was cross-legged in a seated position. So here's your environmentalist hands up, don't shoot. That's what they did with this. Now, he's the first eco-activist to die at the hands of police, and he sacrificed his life for Pandora, or Gaia. And of course, he got the stigmata. They called it the Week of Action, and the Week of Action for Climate Justice, and they mixed it with the anti-racist thing. Like Los Angeles Times said, how white, affluent drivers are polluting the air breathed by LA's people of color. Interesting. Their pollution. See, white, capitalism, Western chauvinism, the West, disproportionately affecting. This is exactly the theme here in the movie. But I wrote about the tie-ins. The tie-ins between the movie and the riots, and how this merged BLM, where they even had a BLM raised fist with a tree behind it. So if you don't remember the story, Cop City versus Eco Anarchists, January 2023 was last year. The Governor Brian Kemp declared a state of emergency, and they put 1,000 National Guard in the streets because of the forest defenders. The environmentalists said that these tall pine trees and oaks were necessary to minimize flooding. So in other words, if you cut down this forest, Gaia is going to flood us. Avatar 2, The Way of Water, has a water-based race in a place like Atlantis, and if the eco-anarchists don't protect the forest, of course, Gaia will flood. But they called themselves citizens of the earth, and I did a deep breakdown into the martyr and this character who was the center of it all. So he had long hair, and they talked about it. I'm like, why would they talk about this guy's long hair? I mean, he's an environmentalist. It's not uncommon. Well, he was donating his hair to children who have lost their hair because of cancer. But if you read deeper into it, he lived in the tree, long hair, like the Na'vi, and it's all about their long hair plugging into Gaia. But he's sacrificing his hair for the victims of capitalism, because that's what obviously gave these children cancer. The story is centered around a world tree that symbolizes the consciousness of the planet that unifies all things. And remember, the WEF, which is all about using climate change as a pretext for regulating the entire world and every person, the WEF has something called Gaia, the Global AI Alliance, making the globe sentient, through AI. It's basically what Pandora, the movie Avatar 2, is about how they find out Pandora's sentient. They find out that the Earth was sentient and we killed her, which is why they have to go to the moon of Pandora. But you have the protesters here marching with a giant tree. It's like the World Tree. Stop Cop City. Defend the forest. And you have a tree growing over a crushed police car. And then on top of it, you have the martyr with his hair. He's plugged into the tree like a Navi. They had a group to a memorial for him, and they said, "This is a call for reciprocal violence to be done to the police and their allies. On Friday, January the 20th, wherever you are, participate in a night of rage." So you have a mostly peaceful protest, but a police car burns. Interestingly, under a sign that said Weston. Again, the West does not live in harmony with nature, but it exploits it. The police are going to clear the forest to make room for a training academy for waging war on poor people. So the burning of the car, I think here represents burning the West, ending its parasitic takeover of nature. And there's more. So I'm looking at the martyr, the one who was shot through the palms of his hands, and they show a few pictures from his house. And he has a copy of a book called Goodnight Moon and Where the Wild Things Are. And between these two, it tells the entire story. Avatar takes place on a moon, a lush jungle moon. If you've read Where the Wild Things Are, a child puts on a wolf costume, like his pajamas, to mix in with the indigenous creatures in the jungle, and he becomes their king. These are the wild things. So this is analogous to the Avatar concept, where the humans project their consciousness into the bodies of Na'vi so they can mix in with them. So in other words, the Avatar concept is somewhat present in Where the Wild Things Are. And the story in Avatar is about Jake Sully, who becomes the king of the Na'vi, just like Where the Wild Things Are. And then the book Goodnight Moon, obviously Pandora is a moon. These are not coincidences. This is all concurrent programming, connecting new environmentalist activists to anti-police activism. Man's path of exploitation is paved with violence against those living in harmony with it, plants, animals, and citizens of the earth. And of course, George Floyd and Gaia are both saying they can't breathe under the oppression of the West. And I wrote a thorough review of it, the movie itself. And the way I would describe Avatar 2 is blue marble for this generation. So blue marble, they showed us the world, and it catalyzed the modern environmentalist movement. And what Avatar has done in Avatar 2, it has reintroduced the concept of Gaia to this generation, and you can see here how it's merged with the environmentalism. So new Avatar and is NASA's new blue marble. So the blue marble, again, December 7th, 1972, it's the most reproduced image in history. Apollo 17 was the last piloted lunar mission. Blue marble was made man a witness. And it made us a witness to the precariousness of Earth. And this was the birth of the environmentalist movement. And so, having watched Avatar: The Way of Water, it's an immersive journey into not only these people connected with Gaia, but it's all blue. Everything is blue. The people are blue. It's all part of the symbolism here. There's a bit more about it as well. James Cameron had said, "I always think of testosterone as a toxin that you have to work out of your system." Well, the movie made the bad guys Marines, and they're totally paragons of toxic masculinity, male-dominated culture, because humans don't care about balance, but the Na'vi do. But this is interesting in itself that Cameron makes the bad guys the Marines with the big guns. And think about who's the main enemy of all mankind in Terminator 2. Well, I mean, Arnold Schwarzenegger. And then think testosterone, T2, Terminator. Arnold Schwarzenegger looks like he's on a lot of it. And he's got the big gun. And then we have a couple of other things. I mean, I would compare the movie to Dances with Wolves, compared with maybe Fern Gully. But if you remember the movie with um, Kevin Costner, Dances with Wolves, there's a scene where the buffalo are murdered en masse, and I guess their skin is taken, but the meat is left to rot. Their tongues are removed by the white hunters, but they're left to rot wastefully. And the Kevin, I guess the West, the person who represents the West, the defector from the Civil War, Kevin Costner's character, he witnesses this. He witnesses his people destroying the livelihood of the indigenous people. Well, this scene is repeated basically element for element, but it's these whale-like creatures that are hunted and harpooned and brutally slaughtered by the Marines. So Avatar makes it look like man is greedy, destructive, and then there's a scientist who's drinking himself to death because he says science puts money above empathy. And why are they killing these big whale things? They're taking some golden liquid out of their brains. There's all kinds of areas to go into here, but there's more. Because while this was happening, we had a lot of talk about floods at the WEF. Ellen DeGeneres made headlines. She said, "This is the 5-year anniversary from the mudslides that killed people. This is crazy. On the 5-year anniversary, we're having unprecedented rain. Mother Nature is not happy with us." So as this movie's out and there's talk about floods in WEF, you have these celebrities talking about how we're having these unprecedented rains. And you can't disconnect James Cameron from the sinking ship, the flood theme, the Titanic, which is a metaphor for wealth and privilege. So its sinking represents the crumbling of the power structure. There's a lot we can go to with James Cameron. Don't Look Up, the Titanic. Long article. What I'll do is I'll post a link below. I'll post a few links in the next newsletter, and I'll mark these ones unpaywalled. If you want to read back to Cop City, mainly because it's easy to not pay attention to these things, just assume that it happened. But in this case, no, Cop City's totally fake. The martyr story is just not believable, and it's too tied in with Avatar 2. Commenter says Schwarzenegger was detained at a Swiss airport for not paying duties on a Swiss watch. Well, I would say screw your freedom. Isn't that what he said to us? He's part of that World War Zero. See, he's the Terminator. They want to get rid of people to save the world. Well, World War Zero is this war on carbon to cut man's carbon footprint in half by 2030. Which I don't know if that means that we have to breathe half as much or they're going to kill half of us, but Arnold Schwarzenegger is a part of that. So he's the Terminator in real life. Okay, he was detained in Munich for not declaring a luxury watch. Why is he flying? Why are any of these eco-fascists getting on planes? Look, if you're an eco-fascist, you're an environmentalist, you shouldn't be flying. I mean, honestly, you shouldn't even be on a cell phone. You shouldn't own a car. If you believe in chemtrails, you should not be flying. All right, thanks a lot. This is where it's at. It says good night. Yeah, I have to actually take off now in about 5 minutes or so. We're kind of running to the end. I was hoping to get through everything I'd marked. Swatting is really hot right now, apparently, on both sides, raising fears. Usually it's a thing right-wingers do to get clicks and sympathy. How do we stage a swatting that's believable? Let's see what else we have. I mean, I have so many clips of right-wing preachers going crazy, just calling for essentially civil war, the end of times. I would say this. What used to be conservatism is now a doomsday cult. Oh, look, 777 is 666 has found something related. The Las Vegas alien story hit the news where a family claimed non-human beings landed in their yard on April 30th at 11:50. The Super Bowl kickoff is 9 months and 11 days from that event. Interesting. Las Vegas connection, alien connection. They said something fell from the sky. If you recall this story from 9 months and 11 years from the Super Bowl, they said something landed, and I thought it was strange because like they're on the phone calling the police. Yeah, I see an alien. It landed here. Well, why are you calling the police? Shouldn't you be recording it? Chinese New Year is February the 10th, so 11th is the second day in the year of the dragon. Finding a lot of ominous predictions here. Missy Elliott, who was in the halftime show with Katy Perry 9 years and 11 months before the Super Bowl, said she would invite aliens to her own halftime show. And she did an alien abduction thing during the 2019 Video Music Awards. Sci-fi breakdown of Missy Elliott's epic MTV Music Award performance. Okay, there's just so much here. So all eyes on Super Bowl, February the 11th. We're expecting aliens, nukes. What else could it be? There's probably a few other things that I'm missing, but something's going to go down on 2/11 possibly, or nothing. J Diggs says tomorrow is the 4th anniversary of Kobe's death. Okay, that's interesting. There was a story last week where the name Kobe popped up. It was like there was a house exploded, and there was a dog in the story. I think that was named Kobe. Oh yeah, good boy saves Philadelphia neighborhood from an explosion. Uh, a husky named Kobe being hailed as a hero after saving a Pennsylvania neighborhood from a gas explosion. And if you remember, the Kobe Bryant thing had an explosion attached to it. And there was a number of examples of Kobe Bryant predictive programming for helicopter explosion deaths. There was the exploding helicopter in the commercial he did with Kanye. There was the Legends of Chamberlain Heights, where he's in a helicopter that blows up. But the Kobe death seemed to foreshadow the chaos of 2020 in a number of ways. If you remember, he was 41 when he died, quote unquote. But his posthumous 42nd birthday was celebrated by the NBA as Mamba Week. Everybody wore 42s. And that was at the same time that Chadwick Boseman died at 42. And he played Jackie Robinson, first black baseball player. So MLB had 42s on all their jerseys. So you're like, wait, 42s NBA, 42s MLB. What's with all these 42s? And we have a number of answers, and it all ties in. Look, all these race war psyops have the same numbers attached to it. For some reason, 42 is a very prominent one. And I have a theory. By decoding their own symbolism, I think I know what it means. We're looking at two poles of manipulation, up, down, black, white, left, right. And the 33 is often associated with ascension and 42 with falling, but they're also code for black and white. And you'll see this used quite often, like Rosa Parks, 42, Jackie Robinson, of course, associated with 42. Even the George Floyd thing, his drug dealer, 42, but it was on 420 that Derek Chauvin was convicted. I have so many examples of 42 being attached to this particular agenda. All right, I think we've gone through pretty much everything I wanted to catch up on. Also, one more thing. We are on Apple Podcasts, and they now do transcripts. So if you go to Apple Podcasts, you'll get transcripts where they show on the screen, like when you're listening, you see that you can actually opt in. And I'll probably even post the transcripts just for search engine optimization. Anyway, tomorrow should be awesome. We're going to have a track being dropped by Tom McDonald, which will feature a rapping Ben Shapiro. So you don't want to miss that. Thanks for subscribing. Thanks for joining us tonight. Appreciate all the comments. We will be back, if not tomorrow morning, definitely tomorrow evening-ish. This is Chief Crow, Auto Hoax, or GTFO.